good evening and welcome to Cavan TV News and Views. Well, tonight's guest is a very interesting guest because 11 years ago, when Cavan TV was in its very first stages, this lady was the first presenter on Cavan TV. But she's here in a different light tonight. Eimear Crowe is a ceramic artist living in Cavan. And Eimear, good evening.
I can't believe that's 11 years ago.
And welcome. You are being interviewed tonight instead of interviewing. Well, Eimear, 11 years have passed. Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And your little girl has got very big as
Cavan
well.
TV is still...
Cavan's TV is still going.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It has taken many paths since, but we're still going.
Yeah.
Glad to say.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say, well, to folk out there that Cavan TV... it's out on the net and it's worldwide, and we have got people all over the world that have been seeing our programmes, and great, and continue to do so. But tonight, Eimear, you're here to tell me about the most interesting thing. You have an exhibition coming up. An art exhibition coming up in the County Museum in Ballyconnell. And to throw the dates out there, the opening night is a Thursday, the 2nd of March 2023, and it continues until the 19th of March in the County Museum in Ballyconnell. Eimear,
yeah.
Let's get down to bogs. This all stems from bogs.
Yeah,
bogs are the most interesting place for folk out there.
Yeah, the work in this exhibition is inspired by my work with West Cavan Bogs Association. So I was kind of going along really to seeing what the work that they were doing in the bogs in West Cavan, mainly around Ballyconnell in Cavan. And, you know, I've kind of always been interested in bogs, but this kind of reignited my interest because what I learned is that bogs obviously have this unique ecosystem. And because of the nature of their acidic nature, and the fact that they're kind of waterlogged, they're like kind of giant fridges. Like they preserve things, and as well as that, they're plants and insects that are, you know, evolved over thousands of years to live in these environments, in these bogs. So I was very inspired by that, by all those things, you know.
And you were very lucky. You got. You managed to get UCD down to have a look at the bog down there.
UCC, yeah.
UCC, sorry.
So when I was working with the West Cavan Bogs Association, Heather Bothwell in particular, you know, it became apparent that, you know, these places, because of their nature, that they preserve things. That it would be interesting to see how archaeologists work in these environments, you know.
And of course, just to stop you there, we have heard over the years of wonderful discoveries being made in the bogs, of bog bodies, bogman, you know, people from like almost BC. Been discovered because of the preservation in the bogs, and it is really, really interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, the museum obviously in Ballyconnell stuff, you know, they have the bog butter, you know, that's thousands of years old. So yeah, to see how they work in bogs, and also. So I got supported through an artist development grant, small bit of money from the Arts Office in County Cavan, the council. And so we brought down these two environmental archaeologists. And so I worked with them to see how they work in bogs and how because a lot of the, let's say, really sophisticated equipment that archaeologists would use on land, let's say that are not waterlogged or don't work in bogs because of the nature of bogs. So really it's a question of kind of using different techniques and different tools to work within these environments. So I was kind of interested in all that, and also how they sample things in bogs, and so all of that kind of stuff, yeah.
One very interesting thing about where you're doing that work in the area of Ballyconnell is you came across a university. An old university back. You're talking the 7th century.
Yeah, well, this particular part of this bog in this area of Ballyconnell in Cavan is adjacent to a monastic university where they would have studied Brecon law, poetry, and and obviously scriptures and things.
Yeah, and that's where we hear of St. Bricken.
And Latin, yeah. So, and St. Bricken, yeah, so he was a famous abbot at that time, the 7th century. And one of the secondary schools in Belturbet is named after him, and I think a hospital in Dublin as well, because he was, in fact, a renowned kind of brain surgeon. He would have been famous for mending head injuries at that time. And one of the stories is that a warrior who was, in a battle up in Derry, he came to that monastic monastery and asked this abbot to heal him because he had a head injury, and then he stayed on in the monastery and he developed this brain of unforgetting. It's one of these medieval stories that you hear about. But really, I think in just reading different things, what it may be about is this story may be just communicating the idea of cross-curricular learning, that you can learn Latin, you can learn law, you can learn all these things, and it's beneficial, it develops your understanding of things. So maybe that's what it's about.
From all of this, you as an artist, you were inspired, and we'll see some shots now coming up. And you work in ceramic, of course, mainly
clay,
ceramic and clay. And some of the things that come up. Tell us about.
So
a lot of go. So
I have a collection of hands.
Yeah,
so
and we could see them. Yeah, and these hands had offerings, and they.
Yeah, so the hands. Yeah, so when you see a lot of these pictures of bog bodies online or in the museums, one of the things that that always strikes me is this kind of imagery of the hands, that almost like the fingernails are still in. So I kind of wanted to communicate that in my pieces as well. And that the nice thing about ceramics is that the color, you can kind of put color on the surface of things, so the color kind of reflects some of the plants and the clay that exist in bogs. So it's that idea as well. Maybe the surgeon's hand in a way, and this idea as well of relics and
you were saying that one of the interesting things about bogs as well, that it kind of captures the idea that people gave sacrifices years ago.
Yeah,
and they sacrificed people and animals as well as objects.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some different bogs that archaeologists have dug in around Ireland, and they found these kind of specific sites where there's a lot of objects, whether it's tools or jewellery or bits and bobs that people have just thrown into a certain section of the bog. And they reckon it's something to do with some sort of ceremonial, spiritual reason for doing that. So I thought about this in my work, that the figures somehow are kind of like offering things, like they're offering, for, whatever people spiritually now ask for, in terms of maybe at that time, maybe there would have been crops that didn't grow.
You talk about the votive figure,
easier.
The votive figures.
Votive,
Votive figure.
yeah. So votive figures are...
You would see an example of that now.
Yeah. So votive figures, that kind of idea as well of kind of making things to offer up, that maybe these things like figures may have been found in bogs, is kind of all kind of linked in a way, to that idea of...
You can describe one of them now. We can see one of the images on screen.
Yeah.
And like his head and things like that.
Oh yeah, the sleeping Bricken. I suppose that's about like these bog bodies. And one of the things about St. Bricken, obviously the abbot, is that he would have probably done trepanation, which is a way to release pressure in the skull after having a head injury, and that's like putting holes in the in the skull.
So I was your interpretation of
that's
this.
That's me thinking about, okay, what if St. Bricken was found in the bog and what would he look like, and maybe there would be remnants of this kind of treatment on his skull or on his head. So it's based on those kind of ideas, Yeah.
So you have about, and your exhibition, it could be up to 14 different items.
So some of the pieces, the surfaces, are inspired by looking at old medieval manuscripts of maybe of medical diagrams and things. So it's kind of influenced by that as well. So it's all these layers of information on the work that I'm trying to get across. Yeah.
So when you have each of your items on exhibition, you of course have got a passage underneath it to describe it.
Yeah, there will be a
and
little bit of information in there,
information on it.
about it, yeah.
Mm.
And one of the big things about bogs is that, which it's kind of a new learning for me, is that they sequester carbon, like they suck carbon out of the
Now, this will be
atmosphere.
very important information, because you hear nothing on the news and social media today about our environment and what we're doing to the environment.
Yeah.
So, like, this is what bogs are, a natural haven of
We have a lot of
goodness.
bogs in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think Bord-na-Mona and companies like that are actually starting to re-wet bogs. Because when bogs are functioning without interference, and they suck in carbon, but when they start drying out, they actually start releasing lots and lots of carbon.
So that's not good.
That's not good.
So we want them
So we
re-wetted.
want, and when they're re-wetted, it means that all the plants and animals and insects and things that live in these environments thrive.
Continue to live.
Yeah, and continue to live.
In general, just a question, in
Yeah.
general, do you think we're doing enough for the bogs?
Oh God, I don't know. I can't answer that.
You
But
can't,
there seems to be, like, the UCC archeologists. They're part of the Wet Futures Initiative, and that's a European
they're gonna
initiative
work on that, yeah.
to look at preserving bogs throughout Europe. So I think generally there is a move to try and preserve these areas, and I think there is an opportunity in Cavan for farmers that maybe have these kind of bogs areas, that because they're sequestering carbon, they're actually doing what we need to do in terms of climate change, taking carbon out of the atmosphere. That there's an opportunity maybe for carbon credits for farmers to be paid to preserve these areas.
So it could make their bogs work.
Yeah.
Work for them.
Yeah.
Okay, once again, Eimear, to get back to your exhibition, we will say it once again. It's opening on the 2nd of March, 2023, in the County Museum in Cavan, and it's going to continue until the 19th of March. And ceramics there by Eimear Crowe, and the very interesting story, and you've heard some of it tonight, about the bog. And of course the story of bog bodies is very interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think Seamus Heaney would have wrote a lot of poetry around bog bodies. I suppose that visually they're so evocative when you see them in a museum or you see pictures online.
It blows your mind to start thinking, like, so many thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about that in the 7th century.
Yeah, and I suppose because of the nature of the type of clay and how it can preserve things. So when you dig down into a bog, you're actually digging down in time, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so even to go into a raised bog, which is a really unique ecosystem, you're, even by stepping in it, you're going down like years and years of history.
Of course, as well, farmers out there, they don't want anybody going rushing and start digging in their bogs and things like that. That's not on.
No, and they're actually very dangerous places.
Yeah.
Because Heather and people like that have been spending years studying these environments. They know, but you can't just go and walk into a bog. They're incredibly dangerous. They've got drains and places, and you could literally be lost. You could disappear. So definitely not for walking around unless you're with a local or a person that has information, that you have permission from the landowner to go into these areas. They're definitely a no-go.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question, Eimear. How long have you been working on this exhibition?
I suppose kind of started around lockdown, so it's about a year or so. So some of the work is quite recent and other work is not so recent, but give or take a year and a half. Yeah. Yeah.
Well done, Eimear. You haven't been...
Just to say that the museum is exhibiting 9 artists this year. So I'm the second artist to exhibit this year. So look on their website, because it's supported by the Arts Office in Cavan. And the curator there is Holly Roach in the museum. And so just to say that's supported.
And finally, we'll say it again. The 2nd March, Thursday, the 2nd of March this year, and the exhibition is called Between Drumlin Moons of Mountains, which is a line from a poem. And that exhibition continues till the 17th of March in the County Museum in Cavan. Eimear, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was a history. That was a lesson in history and
Well, I don't know.
archaeology all at the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Most
you.
interesting. Thank you very much for coming into Cavan
Thanks,
TV this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.